Hello, hello. Mr. P here, and on today's episode of Cup of Tea with Mr. P, we're going to be talking about why some companies supposedly don't do modern upgrades to their guitars. Hey there, and welcome to episode 18 of Cup of Tea with Mr. P. Today, we'll be talking about something that I don't think really anyone talks about, which is modern innovations with legacy companies. Before we get into my rant here and give you some things to consider, do me a favor and hit that like and subscribe button below. It may not mean much to you, but for a smaller channel like mine to continue to grow and actually show up in YouTube searches, the number has to go up. So, button, you can do it. I believe in you. Yay! Thank you, thank you. Modern innovations in guitar. We live in a new age where technology is taking over, especially in regards to recording. It has never been easier to record and even release singles, EPs, and albums than now. With computer technology, we're brought into a new age, but what about the guitar? In the past 25 years or so, modern music has emphasized bold new turns in things like the use of digital amp modeling, the more commercial use of 7 and 8 string guitars, as well as baritones, because we have people tuning down an entire octave past drop Z now, apparently. And then there are things that consider, well, that some people consider upgrades, like stainless steel frets, plug and play pickups, and, well, upgrading all wiring. Some companies do it, while others seem a bit reluctant and get a lot of hate for it. But why? Well, today on Cup of Tea with Mr. P, that's what we're going to be talking about. Something I see a lot of in guitar communities is people complaining about legacy brands like Gibson, Fender, and Rickenbacker apparently not innovating anymore. Some of the most common complaints that I've seen have been in regard to things like the frets and why no baritone, 7 or 8 string guitars. Now, some people seem to think that legacy companies like these just stick to their basic shapes. Gibson with the single cuts, Vs, Explorer, ES, and Firebirds, Fender with the Strat, Telecaster, Jagmaster, and Jaguar, and Rickenbacker with the 300 and 600 series, or as many people think of them as, Beatle guitars. Now, I can't really speak much about Rickenbacker as up until Daniel Johns using one during Silverchair's Diorama album in 2002, the only time I really saw the guitars were with Radiohead and the Beatles. But for the most part, they're a company that primarily gets associated with a certain type and era of music, and I feel like they, and music lovers, are kind of at a mutual understanding of that. Seeing a baritone 7 or 8 string from them isn't really something I think we'll see from Rickenbacker anytime soon. Fender has kind of dipped their toe out of their comfort zone a bit this past year with the American Ultra Lux series, featuring stainless steel frets. They've also made baritones for years in the forms of quite a few of their models, from Strats, Telecasters, Jazzmasters, Jaguar, and of course, the Bass 6. Now, this past year, they made news by making the first ever documented 7 string Strat for Suicide Silence guitarist Chris Garza. Now, whether we'll ever see a limited run or mass production run in the future is anyone's guess, but of course, people in communities always immediately jump the gun and assume that one must be coming out soon if they see it out there. And I saved my favorite company for last because I think it's interesting that people don't understand that this company that in the past has had the most innovation gets a lot of crap. Gibson. I know what you're thinking. When did they ever innovate? When did they ever do this or this? Well, people seem to forget that once upon a time, Gibson actually did make 7 string guitars, baritones, and even had pretty groundbreaking EQ modifications to their instruments. But you already know where I'm going with this one, huh? I think the problem is some innovations are just a little ahead of their time. In Gibson's Norland era, due to their association with Moog Electronics, Bob Moog was tasked with coming up with a circuit that allowed for additional EQ for compression, expansion, and brightness. This new form of EQ wizardry first went into the Gibson RD Custom and Artist model before being placed in the short-lived Artist series. So this new innovation, partly inspired by the synth-driven new wave era at the time, was rolled into the Les Paul Firebird and ES models. A big complaint that certain YouTubers have claimed is that players thought that these new EQ options were just too shrill. But If you actually took a little bit of time to sit and mess with the controls, you would find that these electronics actually allotted you the ability to carve out your own sound, or even somewhat mimic the sound of other models with the flick of a toggle switch. With nu metal making a pretty big impact in modern rock, Gibson released their first Les Paul baritones in the late 90s and early 2000s. Now, unfortunately, they didn't sell very well and they became something that really just got put out by way of special order through the custom shop. They even put out a 7-string Les Paul and Flying V model at one point, Epiphone as well, which met a similar reaction to the baritone. Not much interest. Other innovations like the self-tuning robot guitar got thrown by the wayside, though it wasn't exactly the first time that something like this was released. Anyone remember the Trance Performance Les Paul that Jimmy Page used during the mid-90s for Page and Plant? Actually pretty cool. So what happened? How come we don't see Gibson putting out 7 or 8 string guitars or baritones into the wild? I think I know why. Notice how at the beginning of this video I referred to Gibson, Fender, and Rickenbacker as a legacy brand. Well, I feel like that term sort of feeds into exactly why. When Gibson put out their innovations, some thought they were cool, but for the most part, they received backlash. Essentially, people tend to have this attitude of, hey, Gibson, what are you doing? Stay in your lane. Stick to your Les Pauls, your ES, your Junior, Explorer, and Firebird guitars, and don't do anything else. Now, I'm sure there are quite a few of you who would say, oh, but I would love to see X-type models get this type of treatment. Right, you might like to see it, but would you actually buy it? I'll give you a more recent example because this is one I can speak on because this is a very RD-centric channel. Now, I've seen people say for years about the Gibson RD, I would buy it if it was the 25.5-inch scale length. Gibson Custom has tested the waters on this year and did it. And now the complaints I'm seeing are, well, I would buy it if it was a USA, or if it didn't have the custom logo and had the flying F-hole in the headstock, or if it didn't have the binding. Well, in 2014, it had the flying F-hole. In 2007, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2014, and 2018, those models were all Gibson USA. You know what happened? The guitars didn't sell and they were blown out pretty much at cost. Guitars priced at $1,200 sold for $600 to $800. $2,100 was sold for a little under $1,000. A company like Ibanez sort of got lucky. They were the first to put out the 7-string, and if you've ever played one, you know it's hard to top the feel of one of their 7-string guitars. You may not be a fan of the shape or the aesthetic, but the tone and feel is undeniable. Schecter, ESP, and their lower LTD line are considered more metal, so they can do the 7 and 8-string baritone thing. Those work. Metal and hard rock is their primary market, where the legacy companies kind of have to keep their pedigree in mind. Those companies have more room to explore. So, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with the ideas as to why the legacy brands really don't branch out too far? Leave your thoughts and comments below. Love to hear what you have to say. As always, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button below for more of my rant videos, tone matching series, and RD videos. I'm Mr. P, and I'll be seeing you soon.